We're back. It's been a long January. How are you doing there, Jared?
I'm good, man. It actually feels like it's been a fast January. I can't believe. Well, as we're recording right now, it's February 1st. It feels like it went by in a breeze, which is crazy, but yeah, also very long. It's kind of
I
interesting.
feel like it's both long and short.
Yeah.
For me, it's been long. It's been a long January. I did
Well, I feel like
CES
yours dates
with
back. Yeah, I was gonna say yours dates back December, right? I feel like your long winter, we'll call it, started
yeah. What was
started
the
in
last
your
episode we
trip
did? Because we
in Virginia.
took a we took a hiatus after I
Yep.
think it was the week before Christmas or after Christmas we did our last show.
I
I
think it
think it
was
was
the
the
week
week
before
before.
Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I just got back from DC and I had my wheels stolen.
Yep.
I got my car back and I got my new wheels and everything's situated. Um, and then I went into the first week of January from the network. Of course, Space Sport is part of a larger tech network called 9 to 5. So I went along with the publisher and people from 9 to 5 Mac and 9 to 5 Google and Electric to CES this first weekend in Vegas. So I was there for the other set that I run, Drone DJ. I did look around for hopefully some space stuff, and there were some like satellites that they were talking about, and then there was of course Zero G is always there, who they do like
Yep.
the parabolic flights. Sony announced that they launched their first satellite into space on what was the first launch of the year? Was it Transporter 5?
Yes.
I can't remember what number on it, but I think it's 5. Yeah,
Yeah. I don't
so the
remember now.
first Sony
It's been a
stuff was
lot.
there. I know it has been a lot. It was like that was the first week. That first week went by so slow because we were up for so like I didn't get a lot of sleep. My sleep schedule was like wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the party atmosphere of CES is like stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. So
Yep.
those two didn't really go well together. But yeah, I came
That's
back
Vegas for you,
with
man.
the good old. It's Vegas for you. Yeah, I did lose all my money that I put on roulette. I put all my money. My theory of gambling is just do it on games you understand. Like I don't understand slots. I don't
All on red.
understand like most of the poker games. Black. If I put on black, dude, always on black.
Okay.
And so I think I think I did like 3 different times. I think I went and did roulette because if I put it on black and I lose it, I understood why I lost. So that is why I did that.
It's
And I
pretty
lost
clear. Yeah,
all
it's pretty
50
clear.
bucks I put on.
Yeah, the
So
one that always gets me is
that was a fun
the
week.
craps table, right? Because it's like you don't
I would
know.
do craps if I'm
You
like
feel
with
like
a group of people.
yeah, but you feel like you're winning because everybody's
Yeah.
cheering, but then you don't win, and
You
everybody like still
you
kind
realize
of
how much you've
cheers, but it's
lost?
like yeah,
Yeah. That's a fun game with a group of people and several drinks in, but we didn't really do a lot
yeah,
of like group gambling. There was a lot of group partying elsewhere. But yeah, I ended up with
nice,
COVID, so came back with that good old CES super
fun.
spreader of COVID. At this point,
The only
you
thing
go
that
on a
comes
trip.
back from Vegas.
Yeah, I mean like CES every year you always get sick at CES every year afterwards. You always get some sort of head cold or
That makes
something.
sense. Yeah,
Uh,
that makes sense.
and ever since 2020, I guess now it's COVID. So I guess every year just come back from COVID. So yeah, I ended up with that. So I was down for like a week, but I'm back and better than ever, ish. So
Nice,
let's get
man.
into
Yeah,
our let's get into our stories this week. That was our first story, just CES and me. Hopefully you had a good January as well. It's been,
yeah. Falcon Heavy went
it's
off. That was
2023.
cool.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
had how many launches? 5 launches from SpaceX this month
yeah,
alone.
yeah. They've been
Plus one
churning
from
and
Rocket
burning, man.
Lab.
It's been
Yeah, which we're
yep.
going. Plus Rocket Lab and all that stuff. So Rocket Lab finally launched their first launch from Virginia. SpaceX is gearing for 100 launches this year, and I think that's like once every like 3.5 days. I think, and they're at like
Yeah,
I started a running article of like keeping track of their launches this year, and I have an average, and I think they're at like 4.8. So I think they actually have to up their
they got to
their
speed up.
launch cadence. Yeah, if they actually want to meet, it's insane that they have like no, it's more than 5. It's 7, or I think actually 7 or 8 launches this month alone.
Yeah,
So how
it's
crazy
crazy.
that sounds is that we had that many launches in 1 month. They actually have to speed it up if they want to reach their 100 launches. I mean, we do if you do the good old 100 divided by 12, we get 8.3 launches. So They got 8 launches this month, I think, 8 or 7 this month. So I mean, they're on track, but their daily rate isn't on track. So we'll see how that turns out the rest of this year. Back to Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab launched their first rocket, of course. This is what I was there for in December. Turns out I had to wait 1 more month for that. I didn't get to go down for this one, but they also showed off some Neutron progress, which is super cool. Neutron is their next generation rocket. This is what's going to be replaced. I don't know if it's going to replace Electron, but it's going to be kind of like their bigger next rocket. We saw, when I was there in December, we got to see a test segment of one of their tanks in their ICF facility. They didn't have that from the press I know. They didn't have that in the facility when the January press went down, because they had another Electron in that facility. They had to make room for it, so they had to move that. And now they have also finished their first temporary structure down there near Wallops Island, which is where they're going to be building some first tanks. And then I think Peter Beck shared a photo of them mating some of the tank segments together. Not sure where that photo was taken. If that was taken at their headquarters in Long Beach, their facility in New Zealand, or their temp facility in Virginia, because I think they just finished that structure, so I doubt that they have that much hardware inside. But it looked pretty good when we were down there in January, in December, so maybe the photo was taken there. But they're already pretty well on their ways with test hardware for Neutron, and that area is going to get a big awakening with the number of launches they're going to get now, because
about to get busy.
Before it was only 2. Now it's only it's going to be probably like 6 or 7 probably. So that's going to be huge for them, and I think they're going to try to push for like 12 electrons a year from there. Nice. And then we'll see what happens with Neutron.
It's cool.
I know you're a big you're a big bourbon fan. Do you want to talk about the next segment? Oh wait, no, I'm the big bourbon fan.
I'm not. That is you, my friend. That is you.
All right. All right. So we'll talk about the next thing after this. But we gotta start. I saw this story pop up as one of my. Actually, I heard it from one of my bourbon podcasts that I listened to out and about. And I was driving around. I'm like listening to it. All of a sudden, it goes like, "Oh, well, it looks like we're getting our first bourbon aged in space." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" So I had to look into this.
Yeah, hold on. Tangent real quick. What do you hear in a bourbon podcast? How long does a bourbon podcast normally run? What's the run time?
Oh, an hour? Easily. There's a lot going on with bourbon. Bourbon's huge. So
I know that, but I mean, like, what do you guys listening or talk about?
There's 3 like podcasts in this one podcast. So they have like a monthly like roundtable of a bunch of people who are like in the bourbon space, and then they do interviews, and then they do like the news, and then they do tastings. So there's a whole bunch of different type of shows in this one feed. But like, so one of them was like the news that I was listening to. It's like This Week in Bourbon, and sometimes that turns into the show's called
This Week in Bourbon.
This Week in Bourbon is one of their like little segments they have on their show. Yeah, that's so they're talking about just like throwing out press releases, and it's like in January, news is pretty slow across all industries. A lot of people take off vacation. This is also just they just rounded up the year-end earning reports for a lot of companies, so they're not really like pushing towards things like they are at the end of the year normally. So they're always like going for trying to find press releases, and this one press release came out from Mystic Galactic. I was thinking Virgin Galactic. Mystic Galactic. It's actually Mystic something Farms and Distillery, I think is what the parent company is. And they're planning on aging bourbon in space. So let me have some fun talking about bourbon with you. So what does aging? Okay, so let me describe. I'm a big bourbon guy. I have a little whole bourbon selection over here. Big in the bourbon. What is bourbon? Bourbon is whiskey. Whiskey's not bourbon. Bourbon is whiskey. It's kind of like a rectangle and square. You know, not every rectangle. Every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. Bourbon is a U.S. only product, kind of like how Scotch is only in Scotland. Was it Champagne can only be in France or something like that, I think.
Yep.
So it's pretty much, your normal whiskey. You have your it has to be at least 51% corn in like the what you're distilling, and then you have rye and other wheats along there. You have it has to be distilled. Well, it has to be distilled in the United States. You have to age it in the United States. It has to be aged in oak barrels. For I don't think there's actually an age limit for how long it has to be within the oak barrel and aging.
There's probably a minimum, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't cure right.
I think it might be 3 to 4. Well, you have to do it. I think it's 3 to 4 years. I think that's what it
Got
is.
it. Okay.
Yeah, you have to age it enough to get flavor. That's where the flavor comes from. You get a little bit. You get some flavor from the grains you put into your mash bill, which is what you ferment to get the alcohol, and then you have some a large portion come from the barrel. You char the barrel to get all the flavors and all this other stuff. So Mystic Galactic, they're going to be selling. They're going to be selling. There's some of their. It's going to be aged for 3 years, I think, here on Earth. And then they're going to launch it, and it's going to age for another year in space. So, Mike, there's a lot of questions going on here. One, they listed off a couple of companies in their press release, and I reached out to all of them. Only one got back to me. So they mentioned SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Relativity. I think the other one, it's like Inversion Space, I think it's called. And then of course they had like Bank of America and Cooperage, which makes barrels.
I feel like this is like SpaceX's chance. Like Tesla did the one tequila bottle. Like I feel like SpaceX could do their own
do a bourbon bottle.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. I would buy it. I'll get to the point. How much? So it's only gonna be one barrel.
Okay.
So a barrel. Which is
very expensive.
They're decent size. They're very big. The barrels are pretty big. Yeah, it's gonna be $75,000 for a bottle. And so like I was trying to go through the companies that they listed off and be like, okay, how this company is looking into this work. They have Bank of America. That's easy. They mentioned in the press release that if you pay $75,000 for this bottle, your $75,000 goes into a bank account, which is probably going to be a Bank of America. And then there's going to be certain fees throughout the process that they'll deduct, but they only gets fully retracted from your bank account when the bottle is presented to you.
It makes it back to Earth.
So it's a little less, it seems less scammy, because the bourbon world is full of like the next like big thing, and it's very similar to EVs.
I think tequila went through this like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, like I mean, bourbon's exploded, so everyone's trying to do the different things, and they're always trying to do. There's a lot of what's the term? It's like whether or not it's like going to be a scam or is this going to fall apart after a couple years.
Sure.
So that's I think their way of trying to protect it. Like, no, we're serious. We're actually going to try to do this. So we're not using your money to fund it. We're just, but you need to pay for it now. Which is
crowdfunding.
Interesting. They have a cooperage in there. Cooperages make barrels for bourbon, so they're gonna work apparently with someone to bake a barrel that can be used in space. That's where I think it's gonna get really interesting. So then you have
because
I reached out to SpaceX.
It's got to be organic, right? The barrel has to be organic.
Well, it's got to be wood. It's got to be wood. Wood's not that big of a problem. You can put wood in space and it's just fine. It's got to be sealed. It's got to be able to hold the pressure, which is going to be interesting.
Right. The pressure is like the thing I was going to talk about.
Yeah. So we're going to get to that. Let me get to the rocket companies. You have, Relativity is not in there. It's SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, Rocket Lab, and It's a Relativity Rocket Lab or Firefly and Rocket Lab. I think it's one of those companies. So obviously they're going to try to partner with them for launches. I reached out to all of them.
Astra should jump in this and try to refund
try to gain some
replenish try to replenish their status.
Their stat. Yeah. Oh, they just announced a good milestone on their engine for Rocket 4, but whatever.
Nice.
I reached out to all of them. The only company that got back, two of the companies got back. One of them wasn't in the press release. I sent them an email by accident, and then we kind of joked and laughed about it, and then that was it. And then Rocket Lab reached out, and they said they don't have any projects working with Mystic yet. So I'm assuming they have not reached out to any companies yet to actually work on the project, which doesn't bode well for them. But not uncommon for companies to not, like reach out yet until they're ready. So tack that in the middle of like whether or not it's actually a scam or not. We'll put that in the middle as a yay or, doesn't help them, doesn't hurt them. So the other company that was interesting they mentioned was, I think it was called Inversion Space. I would have to like refine the press release and double check that name, but I never heard of them before. I looked into what they're doing. They're trying to build small capsules that can be launched and returned to space, which I'm surprised doesn't exist yet already.
Yeah.
It makes sense that someone, that I mean, it's not a big need for them, but that's kind of the next step. So we've gotten to the point where you can launch small objects into space, but to return objects from space,
how do you retrieve it? Yeah.
You have to get them, they have to launch on a Soyuz or a Crew Dragon or a Dragon spacecraft, either crewed or non-crewed. Right. There's no way of launching your own item to space unless you design it yourself, and that's really expensive and really hard. I mean, I think JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, they use wood. So that was a good example. They actually use wood to make a small reentry spacecraft because wood is a pretty good insulator and heat shield actually. So here's how I'm expecting it to work. They mentioned that they're going to break up the barrel into smaller barrels. So there's going to be more than one launch. You're not going to launch one barrel because one barrel would probably take up. It's going to be really, really heavy, and it's probably it probably takes up the amount of space that you would have in like a Crew Dragon, or a Dragon. Yeah. So like you would have to launch it in a Dragon to be able to return it. So they're going to probably break them down into smaller barrels, put them into these. Some of the Inversion Space makes these smaller reentry capsules, and probably launch them as rideshare missions on SpaceX or United Launch Alliance, or you could probably do even dedicated missions, probably on Rocket Lab or I think it was Firefly. Firefly, I think, is the one who was on the list. So one of their companies. That's probably how it's going to work. I can totally see this happening. As someone who likes bourbon, I would really like to try it. So, Mystic Galactic, if someone's out there, please, can you?
So, hit up Seth on his Patreon page and start donating so he can buy one.
I did reach out to them. They seem really nice. I gotta they sent me a number to talk to them more about it. I kind of want to do that.
Nice.
But it is interesting to see like how this goes. Yeah, so I don't know where it's going to be aged for 3 years before it goes into space. I don't know if that's like of course, distilleries are continuously having stock go through, so they could take it from barrels that are already been aged through space. So this could be launching this year, next year. I doubt that. Or it might be going to the warehouse now to be aged for 3 years, and then so this might be a long ways away before we see this materialize. Right. But we
could be at the beginning of the 3-year period, right? Or at the beginning.
Yeah, or we could be halfway through. We could be at the end.
Or halfway through, yeah.
Either way, we have to wait from the launch, and then they have to be up there for a year, and then they have to return. Right.
So I don't know. My first thought when I saw this was, okay, this is a great test of time travel. Like, how do we figure out how to get instant bourbon? Like, you could send it out, right, fast enough, and then bring it back fast enough. Will it age appropriately if you send it far enough?
Well, no, because if you go fast enough, no, if the thing moving faster is not moving long, we're aging.
Right.
Yeah, no, dang it, that was such a good idea. Dang it, no, relativity.
Yeah,
dang it. Stupid Einstein.
Yeah, that was my thought was like, how do we time travel this thing?
How do we move these at the speed of light, or do we?
Yeah,
so we can. So you can. Age
but
faster.
Honestly, I mean, it's. Yeah. I think the coolest thing about it is it's sort of like, we'll see how hokey it is and how legit it becomes.
We'll see if it actually happens.
This is just like
that's like the biggest. Yeah,
this is like one of many like, commercialized ways to. Yeah, it's almost like when everything is made out of like sea salt. It's going to become that at some point. At some point maybe we'll get moon rock, right? And then how vodka's filtered over like a rock. You could filter it over moon rock, right? It could be moon filtered vodka. Man. So I just feel like this is just opening a gateway of like, of course someone's gonna
go age some bourbon on the moon for sure.
Yeah,
it's gonna be like a 50-year aged bourbon. It's gonna just taste like oak. It's gonna be nothing. You're gonna feel like you have like an oak leaf in your mouth.
Yeah, I wonder. I do wonder how like sort of the chemical reaction. Sort of like, does it lose? Its potency?
Okay. Oh, that's a good point. Yes, I want to talk about this. Yes, this is my biggest question: is how is this going to taste? Because there's a science to aging bourbon. Like there's a huge
Sure.
science to it. So
But all that
one thing that
science
goes
and chemistry is based off of like
based off
our
Earth
atmosphere and
and
gravity. You're right.
yeah, is also our atmosphere. Temperature is a big thing. So I did
Sure.
a tour of a distillery down in Kentucky, and they mentioned that below 40 degrees is where aging kind of stops. So my biggest question
Okay.
is that are they going to be heating this to a certain degree? Because you're going to be doing
Oh yeah.
huge temperature swings in orbit. You're going to be on the sun
Yeah.
side, and it's going to get very, very hot, and you got to dissipate that heat, or you're going
Yeah.
to have very hot bourbon. And you're going to get on the cold
Yep.
side, and you get really, really cold, and so you got to heat it up to be able to get, aging process
Yeah.
going.
Will like the alcohol
Many times a
evaporate?
day.
Like
Yeah, because bourbon that's made up here in Wisconsin and bourbon that's made down in Texas are very, very different. Texas is much hotter and is much, much spicier, rather than stuff that's made in Kentucky or Wisconsin. So that's actually my biggest question. Like I'm so interested in seeing how that goes. Apparently, if you buy the bottle, you get a full 750 milliliter bottle, which is the standard size bottle of liquor in the United States. And then you get a smaller, I don't know what the size is. I think it's 50 milliliters, I think they said, to taste it. Because if you're spending $75,000 on a bottle of bourbon, that's not a bottle you open. That's a bottle you keep and then you sell it for much, much more in 5-10 years. So
you'll never. So no one's gonna ever taste it.
no, because they're giving you like a little 50 milliliter bottle that you can open and taste. So
Oh, I see.
like that's not the full size bottle. So I guess you'll probably get like
Got it.
1 or 2 pours out of that. So we'll see how
Got
anyone
it.
who gets this bottle actually gets to do a tasting on a bourbon podcast that I listen to. So
All right.
that will be really interesting to see how that goes. So I will it will be my pleasure to keep you guys all updated on this.
Yeah, looking
this
forward to
developing
the
story.
progress.
Yeah. So all right. Our last news item for today, Blue Origin. So Blue Origin hasn't done anything. That's the reason why they're in the news. Is because they've
Literally
done
has not
absolutely
done
nothing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. The reason why I kind of looked into this is article came out from Ars Technica, Eric Berger, and he was talking about it's been 4 months since their failure, and they've said nothing. They've done nothing. They've no issue. So the recap: 4 months ago, they were launching NS. I think it was NS-23. It's the new Shepard launch they're doing. Uncrewed flight of only it was research, a research flight. So there's scientific payloads on top. It launched, and during ascent, there was an issue with the first stage booster, and they aborted the launch. And since then, they started an investigation. The FAA is involved with it because FAA overlooks all commercial space flight in the United States. So, in my opinion, I'm not a customer of Blue Origin. I don't have the money for it. But if I was a customer of Blue Origin, this is the time I would want them to be like as transparent as possible, right? Like,
yep.
Blue Origin is historic for saying nothing about anything and all of a sudden things happening. This is probably not the time to do that. Like you want to.
I feel like Amazon's been run the same way.
Yeah, it's a very Jeff Bezos way of doing things.
Yeah,
and it's. I don't know. I feel like this right now is like a really big issue for them. Like they shouldn't be doing. Like they need to be very forward on how this investigation is going. And they really haven't said anything. It's been 4 months. And it's interesting because this month, Jeff Bezos' girlfriend, gosh, I am now blanking on her first name, but her last name's Sanchez.
It's all right.
She's a pilot. She's a helicopter pilot, actually. I didn't know this. She did an interview with Wall Street Journal, and she mentioned that she's going to be leading the first all-female flight on New Shepard within the next year, like within the next 12 months. They said by early.
And this isn't like a celebrity fight, right? Flight. This is like a.
We don't know who the crew is. No idea.
No, but this is actually like this isn't like up. This isn't just like let's go up, let's go down. This is like, hey, let's actually get into orbit.
No, this is on New Shepard. It's on New Shepard. So it's gonna be.
It. Oh, right.
Yeah. So, but all the seats are gonna be female. Which is going to be really awesome. She's a very big advocate for getting women into becoming pilots. Because I think she mentioned something about there's like less than 10%, I think like or 9% or something like that are licensed pilots are female. So she's always big into getting more people into that, which is really awesome. But there's still no word on the next Blue Origin launch at all. And
Right.
so we all and I think the interesting thing that's going to happen is the Blue Origin has had two rockets. They had two capsules. They had two boosters. They had the older booster who was doing uncrewed research flights, and then they had a newer booster who was crew rated and was doing crewed flights. What they're going to do, it'd be interesting to see what they're going to do going forward, because if they stick with having only two boosters and they want the newer booster to be crewed flights, so they move the current crewed booster, they're doing uncrewed flights, and they build a new booster that do crewed flights, and that probably has to have some sort of flight test capability into it. We could be looking, I mean, unless they're building it right now, which I bet they are. I bet they're doing things that we're just not going to know of. There's not like they're sitting around doing nothing all day. Like they're working. We'll have to wait for that to come online before we see more, crewed launches. And it's
right
in 2020 when the commercial thing kind of like took off. We were all just kind of like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. We're gonna be seeing like these flights go all the time now because it's relatively easy. And Virgin Galactic has launched one, and then they ran into issues with the FAA, and then now they went into some issues with their vehicle, and they went into a maintenance delayed maintenance, and they're trying to get up and started again this year. And now Blue Origin, who was running it in 2021, ran into an issue, and now, or 2021, 2022, and ran into an issue, and now they're kind of like grounded for a while. So it's interesting to see what happens. Virgin Galactic is not the most steadiest of companies when it comes financially, because they're also went public and their stock has dipped down pretty low. Virgin Orbit is not into a great financial issue because they also just had a funding round given pretty much by injected funding from Richard Branson to kind of get them through their next couple launches, and they just failed another launch. So it's a very interesting time of year for the commercial market, space commercial and space tourism market at the moment. So
yeah, it just seems like, even though there's not that many companies out there, but consolidation is sort of happening on its own, right?
Yep.
Obviously we talked a lot about Astra towards the end of that last year, and as this journey goes on, these companies space is hard, right? So they're going to find out more and more as time goes on how difficult it can be, and it's going to be survival of the fittest. And I think we're just going to see a lot of contraction happening over the next probably 2 years, I would say.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see like how the next few months kind of pan out for Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, because they really need to start getting going on stuff to be they can't continue.
Yeah, I mean there was that whole period where it was like, which of the three billionaires is going to win the space race, and clearly there's only one sort of actually doing anything. So
so that's interesting, and that's our news for this week. We're going to go into our main topic, but first we're going to hop on to a break real quick, so we'll be right back.
Cool.
So our for the main topic today, we're going to talk about SpaceX, because guess what happened last week, Jared?
What happened last week, Seth?
They put fuel inside of it.
They what?
Oh wait, they put fuel inside, but this time a lot more fuel.
Yeah, inside of what?
So inside of Starship. So
you didn't say that. You said SpaceX.
Oh, I did say SpaceX, not Starship. I was close. It was close.
Yeah. It's all good.
Finally, we saw him do a wet dress rehearsal, like a full-on wet dress rehearsal, last week, and we're expecting some sort of stack fired this week. So, we're here to talk about, is Starship ready to launch, and when is it going to launch? And that is going to be pure Starship, because who the hell knows? Because there is so much that goes into this. It's like, even if they do stack fire this week, they could damage something, and then they could they could have to redo it, because I think they put in new Raptors. I think they replaced two of the Raptors between the wet dress rehearsal and now. So they have to do some more testing. So I think I think it was kind of rumored to be midweek this week, but it's Wednesday as of recording this, and we still don't have a stack fire, and we don't really have any clues of a stack fire happening soon. Maybe Friday, end of the week. I don't think they can do things over the weekend, per some agreements with the with the city.
National Preserve.
Well, they're right next to that beach, so I don't think they can
Yeah.
close the roads on the beach for like long
That's
periods
fair.
of time. They can only do like short closes. So I haven't looked and see what the road closers are like. I'm assuming they're just rolling road closers every day, and then every day they
You know
get
what's
canceled.
funny?
Kinda like,
Hold on. Let's take a quick second to just talk about that. So like they're probably jumping through all these crazy hoops that NASA never had to jump through back in the like 50s and 60s,
oh,
right?
easily.
NASA's
Yeah.
just like, you know what? This looks like a good spot. We're going to set up shop and just do what we do right here on the next to the
Yeah,
beach
like they were
in
just
Cape Canaveral.
it's all federal land. Yeah, so Kennedy
Yeah.
Space Center was just put on federal land. So they had It
Yeah.
was actually interesting. They had the reason why Kennedy Space Center is where it is. There's two reasons. One, it's as close to the equator as you can kind of get on mainland United States, and two, there was a really nice plot of federal land just sitting there waiting to be developed and doing something. So there was a lighthouse there, it was Cape Canaveral Lighthouse. If you ever go down there and see it, it's that was there before everything happened. There was I think there was a small Navy group there, and the Coast Guard was there for the lighthouse, and then it has grown to be what it is now today, all because there's a nice little plot of federal land. SpaceX, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is buying up private land to try to do this, and it's taking
Right.
much more of a
Well, yeah, but
tedious than it is
not only that part of it, but just think about all the
the regulatory,
regulations that have
public
happened
road.
since
Yeah, like you're
well,
on
just like all the like there's all these environmental protection things now.
Yeah.
And like
you didn't have
there's
you
like
didn't-
all
when was
these.
the EPA created? It
They
was
didn't.
the
Yeah.
90s,
Well, they
right?
didn't really care then.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
there was really
anyway.
no environmental concern back in the 60s. They were just like go
Yeah.
go. So, it's interesting. What happens next is, of course, the static fire. When they need to get through the firing all 33 engines. I don't know for certain if it's going to be a full duration static fire or if it's going to be a short static fire. I think it's going to be much longer than what we've normally seen from static fires. I don't know if a full duration static fire would. I don't know if anything would survive a full duration static fire down there. So I don't think that's what it is. I haven't looked at all of what it's going to be. I just know it's going to be a static fire. So they need that. And then they're pretty much ready for launch if the static fire goes well. But if anything goes wrong with the static fire, if they damage a booster, they have to get a new booster. And then you have to start this whole process over again with wet dress.
Yeah. My guess is it's not happening.
Static fires, wet dress rehearsal, full static fire, then you can launch. So
Yep.
if this booster has any issues, we're not going to see a launch for probably a couple more months. If this booster has a good static fire, then we have to go to the FAA, can you please give us a launch license? I know we've been a pain in the butt. Can you please give us a launch license? And at that point, it's all shrouded in, proprietary technology and secrecy and all the red tape and all this other stuff that we just don't get told about because it's just that sort of, those sort of requirements just aren't publicly mentioned as much. So they could be ready and be out, like the FAA could have fixed all the issues from their environmental review and they could be ready to launch next week. I doubt that, but or they could be ready to launch already and they just need to go through the process of a launch license, or they're going to have to, this might be a few more months before they get a launch license because the FAA might be wanting things done. We don't know what their status is with the FAA, so that's kind of like a big question mark. And then of course the nearer question mark is how the static fire goes. So there's a lot happening with Starship. But there is one thing that we do know for certain is that they're really moving more over on Florida as well. So that's where we're going to start seeing more activity.
Yeah, last time I was there, structures are being built. Things are getting serious. They're starting to obviously make their footprint a lot bigger there.
Yeah, I mean, they've been really pushing on building that pad out at 39A. I mean, they have... they raised one of the they raised at least one of the chopsticks, one of the lifting arms up onto the launch tower there because they already have a launch tower there, and they switched over their the old shuttle hydrogen tank. I believe it was a hydrogen tank because oxygen is still used for Falcon 9. I think that's the big oxygen tank. Hydrogen tank. They've moved over the methane. They've repainted it, put methane over it. So that's gonna be really cool to see this tank that was used for shuttle now being used for Starship. And when they're going to start launching another, Not really sure. Maybe they could probably do some. Maybe we might be able to maybe see some stuff next year. That would be interesting to see. But of course, Starbase, sorry, is still. God, there's so many freaking stars things that SpaceX has. Starship, Starbase, Starlink. Gosh, so many.
Starman.
And what Starman? What's their military one? Is it? I can't remember what their military version of Starlink is called, but it's even similar for that as well. But that's going to be, of course, their Starbase is going to be like more of their R&D and their facility, and then they're going to start moving more and more of the launch stuff over to Florida, and we're going to see kind of Starbase just turn into probably something similar to McGregor. We're going to see. Yep. I mean, I guess we'll see. Maybe the orbital launches take off. Maybe the orbital launches like become really awesome there, and maybe it's the some of the things they have to do now for launches kind of like change, and they can launch way more out of Texas, and then we're going to see them pick up. Who knows what's going to the future of Starbase? But we do know that they're really pushing over in Florida. They're really pushing for this orbital launch. I think that we could totally see a launch in the first half of this year of Starship. Do you think?
Okay, I'll take the over. No, I'm thinking the back half of the year.
Really?
Yeah, I just think they're gonna run into a bunch of problems they don't even know yet. I mean, they obviously they do know, true. But I mean they're just gonna hit a bunch of snags that are sort of like waiting.
I'm not. I mean, snags. You think like in development of the booster or like during launch? Because I just think it's because if the launch blows up on the launch pad, hey, at least they got to a launch. That's that is the bare minimum. Sure. If they ignite the engines and they release the clamps, that is as far as I think. That is my definition of them launching in the first half of the first year. The engines ignite and they release the clamps and it attempts to go vertical. Like that is my. After that, who knows what's going to happen? But whether or not it's successful is a whole other question. But I think they're going to at least get an attempt in the first half.
All right. Well, stay tuned.
I don't know. Yeah, it's this whole. It's the thing is we just don't. It's so much we just don't know. It's really hard to really get. Like I don't know if this Stafford is going to be successful. Like that is such a big question mark of the quality of the rocket. Who knows? I mean, it looks great. They've done a lot of tests, but can it handle actual launching? Who knows, right?
Right.
I mean, it took several versions of Starship to be able to do what they wanted to do, and it took before they even launched it, and it took several launches for it to do what they want to do. So it might take several launch attempts to get what they're going through with booster, to get it ready, and then finally a launch. So it could be, what is it? So by end of July, right? Is the end of July 7th, but the beginning of July, so end of June. I think we could totally see, at least a launch attempt or, something by the end of June for Starship.
Cool. All right.
All depending on how well it goes over the FAA. That is like
fair.
That relationship between those two entities is such an interesting one. Between so much, banter on Twitter and the issue and the stuff that they pulled with the Starship. It's funny. I've been calling them low altitude tests, the Starship low altitude tests, when technically back then we referred to them as high altitude tests. But they were, compared to orbit, they were going quite low.
Yeah.
So
anything compared to orbit is low, right? Should be considered low.
So it's kind of hard to refer. It's kind of weird to refer them as high altitude tests when they're only going. I think they were only going was it 12 kilometers? I think it was something like that. I don't know. No,
it's not very.
Yeah, 12 kilometers, something like that. When you're talking about orbit, 500, maybe 400 kilometers. So, yeah. I mean, the stuff they pulled back then with the FAA was so weird and terrible for a launch company to do. So it's interesting to see how this goes with when SpaceX, they seem ready to launch, and the FAA might push back at them and be like, "Yo, no, we need you to do this, this, and this," and they're just like, "No, we're ready to launch though. Come on." But
they just add a bunch of new checklist items.
Yeah, especially with Elon now distracted by Twitter, it's just going to be interesting to see how it goes. So this is going to be an interesting year. It's really going to be an interesting year with Starship on kind of this push to get orbital. It's just going to be so interesting. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Yeah, either way, we win if we get to a launch attempt.
Yeah, that's true. Either way. So Yeah, we're gonna take one more break, and then we'll get into our opinions for this week.
Cool.
All right, we're back, and we have 2 hot takes this year. This week for you. I will go first, and we talked about them earlier this episode. I think this is going to be a year of Rocket Lab. I think while SpaceX is going to push for 100 launches, I don't think they're going to get to 100 launches. I think they'll get to the 70 to 80s mark, which is going to be phenomenal for a private company. But again, I think most of them are going to come from Starlink, which always kind of diminishes the, well, is it truly that awesome if all you're launching?
Yeah, the quality of it.
Stuff. Yeah, like it's cool to launch that many times in a year. Like their operations team and their launch teams, that is seriously impressive. It'd be really much cooler to see, their commercial, for the commercial team, a win would be like 100 commercial launches in a year, which is going to be very, very hard to do. So, no, I think this year is going to be really Rocket Lab. With Rocket Lab, they have not launched double digits yet. I think they're on pace to launch at least 10 to 12 times this year. We've seen their first one launched out of Virginia. They have a second one already lined up in Virginia, and they have another one lined up for NASA out of New Zealand. So we could see pretty close launches between those 2 pads, within the next month or so. That would be kind of crazy for them to launch if they're within a week or 2. That's a pretty good turnaround for them. I think they've launched maybe twice in a month before, but on beginning and ends of months. So, what were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty cool. I feel like they probably have a little bit of the little brother syndrome right now to SpaceX. They're the underdog. No one believes in them. Obviously,
no one believes,
a lot of people do.
They're launching at lower and lower volumes because they're a newer company, and they're launching dedicated missions for small sat operators rather than something you could do transporter wise for these massive and that I think is more and more moving away from the massive conglomerate. I think there'll always be huge rideshare missions. Rideshare missions will probably never go away, but I think I think a lot of people realize like, oh, we can really go to this dedicated, like they are truly like now like an option to do these dedicated missions. And while Virgin Orbit is having issues, they still have customers going. Like there's still people buying Virgin Orbit. It's not like, what was it called? Pegasus. Not like Pegasus where they legit ran out of customers because launching Pegasus was almost as expensive as launching like on a Falcon 9. Like it was kind of insane how expensive Pegasus is compared to any other option. So it's not like that. Like these are much more cheaper options, especially with Relativity and ABL and Firefly coming online as well. Like it's going to become a very competitive market. I think the price is going to go down even more when more competition comes in. I think Rocket Lab is going to be at the top, and this is the year I think they're going to finally push over their double-digit mark, and I think it's just going to be more and more, especially with them expanding, building, they're more than just a rocket launch company now. They've become that successful, be able to launch rockets, but now they're also acquiring companies for satellite buses, and they're building their own, and then now solar panels, and they're using those, and all these other systems that they've been able to acquire with their funding from going public. I think they're really in a place to be able to kind of take off after this year. So,
nice. It's cool to. I was gonna say it's just cool to see. Last final thought on that. It's just cool to see, sort of more competition in the marketplace. Regardless, even if it is different, payloads and different objectives, it's still cool to see sort of competition showing up in the marketplace.
100%. All right, bring us. What's your hot take? Because it's a hot one.
All right.
Spicy.
So. Well, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. You alluded to it earlier, obviously, earlier in the conversation, in the beginning of the conversation, but also earlier in your hot take right here about Rocket Lab. So SpaceX is aiming for 100 launches, right? Obviously, most of those are going to come out of Cape Canaveral. Public opinion, and this is just, I have no scientific knowledge of this. I've not gone out and polled the entire county or area, but public opinion from the neighbors, is there too many rocket launches now? because it's like happening on like every other day. I actually heard
Yeah.
a neighbor complain about like the noise, and I'm like, it's not even
They're
that.
gonna
It's
start
not even
filing
that
noise
crazy.
complaints against
Yeah,
SpaceX.
and it was mainly because because of the booster landings. The rockets
Yeah,
going up, it's
they've
not
had a
as
few
bad,
this
right?
month.
But the
Yeah,
booster landings are extremely loud in the area. So, um,
yeah.
yeah,
Living
is
in
it
an
too
area
many
with
now?
constant sonic booms, it will be annoying as hell for sure.
Is it too
I
many now?
don't feel bad. Like I feel bad, and I also don't. I feel bad for them because like yeah, I would hate living in a place with constant sonic booms, and then I go like yeah, but they're rocket launches, so they're kind of cool at the same time. Like I mean,
Yeah. Well,
like if I
so
live,
it brought
I
me.
know.
Well, I was gonna say it
Go
brought me
ahead.
to this thought process, and this is so funny because I often equate like, and I think whenever I think about rocket launches now and sort of
Hmm.
like how it affects society and just like our normal culture, right, if you will, I always think about,
Yeah,
oh, well, is this how people felt about like the first trains? Like they started laying
yeah,
tracks
sure.
everywhere, right? And people are like, oh my god, look, let's go all stand out and watch the train go by, right? And it's really
I mean,
cool,
we're
and
all
everybody
still
thinks
irritated
it's
when trains
it's
go by. I live right by a railroad, and we're all still
Well,
irritated.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So now it's irritating,
Yeah,
right? Now it's like after a certain time, you're like, God damn, this stupid train will stop like coming through at 12 o'clock at night or whatever, right? And obviously, it's
yeah.
not at that cadence yet, but are we getting there?
I feel like it might. I wonder if Titusville's going to turn in like kind of like San Diego, where you have pretty decent sized navy base there for
Yep.
their aviators. Um, and I know there's a YouTuber that I watch, and there's a few other people I know who live in San Diego, and like the YouTuber is really funny. They have to like pause because they have like jets flying overhead, and they're
Right.
super loud. And it's just like you just kind of like when you move there, you just kind of know that's the thing that happens in an area, and like
Yep.
you just
Yep.
have to live with it. Like yeah, Titusville. If you move to
Well,
Titusville or the Space Coast
yeah,
area,
it's crazy.
you're just gonna have to deal with rocket launches and sonic booms. Like it's just kind of the whole
They're
deal.
yeah, they're building these new neighborhoods that are like literally right across the river from Kennedy
Or like in
Space Center.
Port
So
St.
it's
John, right?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, Port St.
Yeah.
John, and there's a couple in like the Merritt Island area. But anyway, you can,
Hmm.
part of their selling point, and it's listed like on the sign, like come here for beautiful views, great weather, a live community, blah blah blah, and then rocket launches
Yep.
is there, and it's like,
Rocket launches.
okay, well that's a
I
great
wonder if
selling
they're.
point now, but
Yeah, I
like
wonder if they're putting in
in
noise canceling like noise isolating windows down there because I like when
oh
in the
yeah,
house that I grew up
well
in we live on the
sort
approach
of
path of an airport, so the city the airport had to pay for all the houses to
hmm,
get noise
interesting,
isolating windows put in because they back then back in the early 2000s you know they the planes came in pretty low for landing and takeoff, and now they take off and land at much steeper. Well, I think landing's still pretty low, but takeoff is much. It was more of an issue for takeoff. When they take
yeah.
off, they're much steeper now, so we don't have that issue anymore. But I wonder if like if you're you're living on Merritt Island, I wonder if they
Well,
have to put
you're
in
getting
special windows for you.
if you're living out there, chances are you're getting sort of like a double pane type of glass anyway because of the weather, the
Because
hurricanes,
of
and like
hurricanes,
that's
yeah, hurricane windows.
yeah, that's
That's
sort of
fair.
like it's sort of like
Yeah,
if you
I
hit a
think it's a
certain
state
area, I
law
think
right
it's like a
now, isn't it? I think
requirement,
it's a
but
state. Yeah.
no, it's not definitely not a law because it's still way more expensive to purchase those.
Oh,
So,
gotcha.
um, but yeah, anyway, so I'm just throwing it out there. Is it too many? Let us know if you guys think there is.
Is it too
Obviously,
many
if you're
launches?
watching from a distance,
We just
if you're
were
watching from a
talking.
distance,
Yeah, we were just
well,
talking
if you're
about
watching out of state, then it's not.
yeah.
You're like, no, shut up. This is not too many. This is awesome. We love watching this. But just throwing it out there.
Yeah, yeah. I for the space fan, I guess it's gonna be it's the same like for people who love airplanes. It's like man, like I'm really
Sure.
annoying to have airplanes like where I live, we just constantly have airplanes flying up over
Yeah.
overhead all the time, and so for me it's normal because I've lived here for like 20 plus years, so I'm used to it at this point. Other people come to my house and they're just like, oh, it's just so weird to have planes so close to your head, and they're all like freaked out, but they're also like, oh, it's kind of cool, but I don't want to live here. And then there's people who are like love it because they get to see
Right,
every plane
because
that comes in and out of
yeah,
Milwaukee. So
yeah,
I think there's gonna be people who are both like just like it is what it is. Like I'm not against it. I'm used to it. There's people who are gonna be like I
yeah,
like it, but I don't want to live anywhere near it. And there's gonna be people who are gonna be like I don't want this to end. I love it. I want more. I want to see more. I never get tired of seeing planes land, which there are people out there who are like that. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. It's because we were just talking about the upcoming crude launch. We're just like, like where do we view it? Because it's just a Falcon 9 launch, like,
Right.
and like, which is kind of like our privilege of saying that because we've seen so many collectively between us. It's like, yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
Falcon 9 launch. Like, there's really nothing special
I
about
know.
it other than there's crew on top, and so that's kind of always an interesting thing to go to.
Yeah, there's always the
but for
danger
viewing,
factor, right?
Yeah, do you really need to like view it from the press site? I don't know. Like, that's like. Who knows?
Yeah,
Can
exactly.
we find some other interesting way of telling the story of a rocket launch somewhere else? So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yep.
It's very, very interesting. So, all right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Space Explored podcast. We're back after our slightly hiatus of January. We're going to be more consistent this year. That's the plan for me for Space Explorers. Consistency. That is my New Year's resolution for my entire life this year is consistency. So we're going to start. We'll be seeing you guys next week. You can follow me on social media at Twitter at Seth Kirk, SETHKURK. I'm also there on Post. I've been doing a lot more stuff on Post. That's post.news. If you want to sign up, maybe. I've heard the wait list is pretty easy to get through now. If you're tired of Twitter, you can go over there. I'm also there. I'm also on Instagram as well at Seth Kirk. Jared, where are you?
Mainly on Instagram, so you can follow me at Hyperlight, HYPRLYTE. Sometimes I show up on Twitter, but mostly it's only to post the same thing that I already posted on Instagram. So
yeah, he does giveaways on his Instagram. So that's much better than what I do. So you can get some cool photos over there. So yeah, you can follow us there. You can go follow along all the news at spaceexplored.com. You can listen to us at all the major places wherever you podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube if you're watching us now. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you give a like and all that stuff. We'll see you guys all next time.
See ya.